Chapter 21. Somehow, we made it through the night without any further antics or assassination attempts or thwarted explosions. Tamret never spoke much when Vilonic was around, but her silence seemed even more purposeful than usual at dinner. Several times I noticed her glaring at Alice, who seemed completely oblivious. For her part, Alice didn't want to make too much of having toppled Ardov, but she did want to recount our escape from the shuttle disaster over and over again. I understood how that was. You get through something you think is going to end you. There's a need to turn it into a good story. After dinner, I went down to the Sim Suites with Steve and Charles and Colonel Rage. The Colonel had learned a lot about starship operations in the little time we had been here. I thought that was good, though his attitude still scared me.
"We're not going to be done with these people," he told me when we were finished and headed back to our rooms. "Earth's going to have to face them sooner or later, and we're going to have to beat them at their own game."
I hated how the Colonel kept envisioning Earth being at odds with the Confederation. Based on what he'd seen, I supposed I couldn't really blame him. Still, it made me sad to think that the adult who was going to be considered the expert on the Confederation saw this society as dangerous and unreliable. I had loved Confederation Central, the beings I'd met here, the incredible potential and opportunity it represented. I refused to believe that a being like Junip could corrupt all of that. What chance was there to save the Confederation, though, if no one stood up to him? Dr. Roop had told me what we needed to do, and we were all too selfish to do it. We were ready to steal a ship and run away for home. We were prepared to let Junip turn the Confederation into something ugly and horrible. I felt about as torn as I ever had, caught between my two choices, both of which were right, between two obligations equally strong. No matter how things went, I was going to feel miserable. The next morning's breakfast also went off without disaster or near-death experiences. We were on a roll, apparently. Tamret still looked angry or suspicious or something, but I couldn't worry about that now. Everyone was tense. This was the big day. Given how we'd almost been killed on our last excursion, I thought there was a certain amount of justifiable nervousness about today's trip. Nevertheless, things had gone pretty horribly since leaving home, and the prospect of being done with this place had everyone a little animated. I wanted to make one last plea for Dr. Roop's Hidden Fortress scheme, but I sensed that it was the wrong time. Not that there was ever going to be a right time. If we got on the shuttle later that day, and if we managed to get out of the Confederation's central system, it would be too late. Maybe once we were on the shuttle and could go anywhere, there would be an opportunity to convince everyone that it was worthwhile to fight for what was best about the Confederation. I promised myself I would make the case again before we left. We had just finished eating when my data bracelet chimed with a message. Same place as before. Right now. Quapla. The Klingon word was obviously meant as some kind of code. Besides me, and now maybe Charles, the only person on Confederation Central who would ever know about Klingon was Dr. Roop, which was kind of crazy because I'd just been thinking about in that moment. Maybe he would have something to say that would help me convince the others, I thought. Even better, maybe he would tell me he no longer needed me to go to the Forbidden Zone. It would be nice, I thought, to be off the hook for once. I blurted out a lame and rambling excuse and hurried off to the peripheral tower. I was through security and on the elevator about 10 minutes after getting the message, and Dr. Roop was waiting for me, crouched in the shadows behind one of the walls. I could barely see his stubby antlers sticking out.
"Don't come any closer,"
he said, as soon as I stepped out onto the roof.
"I think they may have surveillance drones watching me. If you stay here, they won't see you, so they won't know who I'm meeting with."
"Why did you risk coming here?" I asked, sounding a little hysterical. The last thing I wanted to see was Dr. Roop arrested. You can't put yourself in danger like this.
"I'm afraid what I have to say is too important to wait. I have contacts within the government, and I know about the offer Junip made to you. I know what you think is going to happen today."
"You're going to tell me not to go?" I said. I tried to sell the others on finding the skill tree, but they wouldn't go for it. They want to go home. I really want to help you, Dr. Roop. I want to help the Confederation, but I can't force the others to go along with me.
"I understand that," he said. "But if you board that vessel, You won't go anywhere. Junip plans to have fully armed ships waiting for you as soon as you are out of visual range of the station. He's not going to risk you popping up again. He means to kill all of you, and this time he won't let anything go wrong.
I swallowed hard. We were actually planning on using the ship he selected as a decoy and taking another ship.
That's clever, but it won't work. He knows about your plan, and he'll be watching all departures very closely. He'll figure out which ship is yours without any difficulty.
I tried to process what Dr. Roop was telling me. If Junip knew about our plan, that meant that somehow he had been able to listen in on our conversations. Or worse, we had a spy in our midst.
You must trust me,
Dr. Roop said.
If you try to leave on his terms, you'll die.
We'll just have to leave on different terms then. Dr. Roop shook his head.
If you don't go during the time he's arranged, he'll know you're onto him, and he'll have no choice but to deal with you internally. You and your friends are resourceful, and you've been lucky so far, but sooner or later, Junip is going to win. And in the end, you will either be in prison or dead. You know what I think is the right thing, but you also know I would not lie to you. In my estimation, you have but one option.
You want me to take the ship, and instead of escaping from the station, go in search of the skill tree.
It is your only choice,
he said.
Once you enter into the Forbidden Zone, Junip's forces will be unable to pursue you.
That was the upside. The downside was the reason they couldn't pursue us would be the zone in which we would be hiding would be the forbidden variety. They usually don't forbid zones because they're full of gummy worms and video games. And then what? I asked. Let's say we enter the forbidden zone and find the skill tree. What do we do with it?
My research suggests there are several ancient ship docks in the Forbidden Zone, including one under the station's surface. That is to say, if you find the hidden fortress, you will find both the skill tree and a means of escape. The ships there should be operational. I've arranged for one of my associates to provide you with coordinates to a safe haven, a planet where the Resistance has established a command post. Get the software to them, and they will make sure it gets into proper hands within the Confederation. But dress warmly. This planet is extremely cold.
The rebel base is on an ice planet? I asked, thinking that was a little too close to the Empire Strikes Back.
Yes, I find wearing multiple layers to be most effective.
I'm going to have to convince the others to go along with this, I said. They're all pretty much sold on going home.
They can't,
he said, the sadness evident in his voice.
Not right away. Junip won't let that happen. He will not let you live because he thinks that no matter what, you will rebel against his authority. Ironically, in order to survive, you must do just that.
And how do I convince everyone that they need to become rebels?
Most of them know me. The former delegates know I would not deceive any of you.
Colonel Rage will never go for it. He'll say you're manipulating us into doing what you wanted all along.
I understand how a cynic might suspect that,
he said.
I hope that, among the rest, my past actions will give you cause to trust me one last time.
To be sure, it was good enough for me. If Dr. Roop said that Junip planned to kill us, there was no way I was going to try to escape the station on Junip's terms. Dr. Roop's bracelet chimed. He glanced at the message, then looked up, his eyes wide and startled.
They found me. You need to go, right now.
I can't just leave you.
I'm afraid you must,
he said.
You can't help me here, and everything is depending on you now. Run, Zeke.
I hated to abandon him, but I didn't see that I had a choice. I had to get the information about Junip's plan to the others. Or Dr. Roop would have put himself at risk for nothing. On the elevator down, I told myself that maybe he was mistaken. Maybe he hadn't really been discovered. As soon as I got outside, I backed up far enough I could see the roof. And there he was, a distant image surrounded by peace officers on either side. They closed in on him. I could barely discern Dr. Roop dodging between them, zigzagging like a football player desperate to avoid a tackle. He faked his way through a trio of advancing peace officers in a mad dash. But I couldn't figure out his plan. Where did he hope to go? How was he going to get away? Then, helplessly, I stared in horror as I realized what he intended. He drove towards the edge of the roof. Dr. Roop believed in his cause. in his rebellion, so much that he would embrace death rather than be captured. Unable to turn away, I saw him leap over the wall to the commercial side of the building. I caught a brief glimpse of his form, arms and legs waving wildly as he plummeted towards the ground. And then, mercifully, he fell out of sight.